The August 13 meeting of the CDA will please come to order. You want to take roll call, please?
Yep. Wayne Clark. Yes. Karen Gale. Gerald Motter.
Here.
Jason Metz.
Here.
Donald Niemer.
Here.
Mickey Shapleski.
Here.
Kevin Haas.
Here.
All right.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Anyone, can we have okay, you beat me. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes stand approve of previous meeting. Anyone? Well, do you want to hold 2, 3, 5, and 6 for closed session?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Just want to. We can do whatever you'd like, but we just went through them all in open.
Oh,
And
yes,
then- and
we,
then
we're gonna touch on each of these so that we can explain everything that's open to the public. And then what we can't, then we'll go into closed session and complete that.
All right, so item number 2, discussion in regards to Mandel Group progress in the West Development located at 6774 West National Avenue and proposed South National Avenue Sova development at 6600 West National Avenue, tax key number 454-0649-00 and 454-0648-00 and 454-0650-00. Mr. Stevel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the future, I'm gonna have our clerical staff get rid of the tax key numbers. I don't
Okay.
think for discussion purposes,
A lot of
critical.
numbers.
They are in the development agreement, so we'll do that. Today we have Bob Monnet, President of Mandel Group, to talk about SONA and where they're at and where they're heading. And with that, I'll let Bob introduce Bob and have him introduce his
Yeah, thank
colleagues.
you. And you guys all made the right decision. You're on the right side of the table tonight. So I'm gonna go over here, if that's okay. Before I do, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Adler, who's with me, one of our key development associates, who is working with me on this project. And what I wanted to do tonight, and do I, can I just take the control? Is this, the steering wheel and off we go? Thank you. So, last time we were here, we asked for an opportunity just to come back and talk to you guys, folks, about where we're at, what's going on, what's happened, where are we going? So, in the context of all that, we have some very specific things to talk about tonight regarding what's known as SONA, which stands for South of National, and how that fits into the context of the overall plan for the market. So, if you remember back in early 2016, you guys had an RFP process. We came in, we talked about how we wanted to create a food cluster, how we wanted to create that urban destination here, create a new neighborhood here. We showed you a bunch of images of the kind of excitement that we've been able to create elsewhere in and around our projects, and we wanted to do the same thing here. We had a plan that we presented, which was a 4-phased plan. There was a office part of the plan, office commercial part of the plan. There was a 2-phase housing project proposed, and then there was a commercial cluster, which was to become our food cluster, with the idea that what we were trying to do is take this 100-year-old farmers market and give it not only a lot of new life, give it new meaning, and give it a bunch of new vitality. We felt that the farmers market could become West Allis's outdoor living room, and in fact, slowly but surely, that's been happening. A lot of that's been happening because of efforts from city staff. A lot of it's been happening because of efforts by people like Mark Lutz. We've been contributing to whatever events are happening out there monetarily to help promote them and the like. And so the idea is to create some additional presence for the farmers market and really make that a regional draw for people to think of when they say, where are we going to go tonight, where are we going to go this weekend? Hey, let's go to West Allis. There's this great food cluster, there's these restaurants, there's all this stuff going on at the farmers market. That's the kind of energy and excitement that we think the farmers market has the potential to create. So this was the schedule that was included in our submittal. So we said that in 2016, we would be selected. We'd try to get a groundbreaking by the end of that year. And there was a lot of emphasis on getting the food cluster part of the development up front, and then begin some of the housing as well. And you can see the progression. Commercial office opens, second phase of residential opens, et cetera. And so that was the process that we had, was that we wanted to start with this stuff over here, the food cluster, and start with part of the housing and part of the office space. That was the intended pathway of our development plan, and then a few things happened along the way. One thing that happened is that a number of people that had expressed key interest early on said, you know what, we're not coming after all. So Jim McCabe, Milwaukee Brewing Company, made a lot of noise about coming down here, creating a major facility down here. He ended up going to the Pabst Brewery downtown. So he submitted a letter of interest, but he just didn't come. The next thing that happened was El Rey, who was going to be our specialty market anchor for the food cluster. We went to the table with them 3 different times, and each time they had to sign something to come down here. They said, we're just not comfortable with it. Well, what was happening was, in the grocery space, there was a huge amount of turbulence in the grocery space, a lot of consolidation, and the writing's kind of on the wall when Sendix builds a new building and closes it within about a year of opening the building, because the food and grocery space was just totally saturated in Milwaukee. And so we spent a whole lot of time talking to a whole lot of people. We had people lined up that said, you get the food open, we'll open, so-called co-tenanting agreements. Without a food store, there was nothing. We went so far as, in working with John and his team, we made Fresh Time Farmers Market the deal of the century. There's no grocer that should have said, no, I won't do that. They had previously committed to the 84 South development because they wanted interstate access to their store in Greenfield. Their final conclusion, after saying, we want to go ahead and do this, they called back and they said, we decided that we're going to cannibalize the store at 84 South, which we said, you're not going to cannibalize the store at 84 South. And they were so convinced they were going to, they said, we can't move forward with you in West Allis. So we scoured the market for food stores to anchor this thing. No one showed up. So we had to shift. We can't just sit around and wait for people to show up. You know, we're sitting here trying to corral, and it's like herding cats trying to corral restaurants and the like to come in. The restaurants aren't the lead, restaurants are the followers. The lead was this anchor tenant. So we had to kind of reset ourselves, and so a lot of time in that first 6 or 8 months was time that didn't bear fruit. But in the meanwhile, we finally got Aurora. After about 12 months of negotiation, we finally got Aurora to sign a lease in July of 17. So that ended up, by July of 17, 2 years ago, we said, okay, now we can go. Now we can progress. And we needed to get the Aurora lease signed and get them to agree to a site development plan, because if we started something and didn't leave enough room for them, didn't have enough parking, we didn't want to compromise the Aurora transaction, which was always seen by all of us as being a great anchor for this development and a great piece of tax increment for the project. So the Aurora lease was signed in July. The final development agreement was signed in December, 5 months later, which we had started some work on it, but the public-private development agreement between the city and Mandel was signed in December. And off we went on Aurora, and we built like a bat out of hell then to get Aurora in there. Housing negotiations then commenced at that point to get the next piece going for the housing. And you'll see what happens. We moved to 2018, and actually we turned the building over to Aurora in May of 2018 for them to start their interior improvements, and they got their clinic open at the end of 18, which is really close to where we were in the first place. So we got Aurora done We then decided that because Sona wasn't moving forward very quickly, and we were still having problems without having an anchor tenant on the food side, we just didn't have the right formula on Sona. So we said, let's accelerate both phases of housing and do it all at once. So instead of doing phase one and then following with phase two, we said we're going to build all of the housing at once as a single phase, and then we're going to reset the planning for Sona and figure this Sona thing out. And we're going to talk about Sona tonight in more detail. So fast forward to today, the housing's going to open in a few months here. We're going to be looking for your input on the redesign of Sona. We have since gone out, and something else you're going to be talking about this morning, when the Kearney Trecker building came up, we said, we know a developer that is going to put West Allis on the map with that project. So we went down to Chicago and we marketed the project and solicited Baum Revision to come and get involved in the project. They were on the throes of completing a very similar project in Madison called Garver Feed Mills. They had expertise in food and event space. It was a perfect fit for them. You've seen their plans, and I'm sure you have a conversation on them later. So our goal is to get that, we are hopeful that you move forward with them because it sets up the entire area, the entire neighborhood with a landmark building that really is going to be put to the appropriate use. And our goal is to start Sona this year, later this year, assuming we can all move together on it. And then we get to 2020, and we have other parts of, we want to see Sona get open. We want to start the last building on the Sona site. And if we have good success on leasing up our phase one, phase two housing, we actually have a 2-building cluster where we would plan on adding another 160 or so housing units on the other side of the street. So we'll show you the plan for that in a moment. So to date, we've committed $49 million of investment. Since the time we started construction, we've been investing about $2.25 million a month in West Allis at annualized $27 million a year. We're in. We're all in. And we are not going to stop until we finish this project. Next up, we have the Sona food cluster. There's a public, there's a farmer's market, public parking that we're discussing with staff right now that would be accommodated on the same block so that all that parking that's currently used by the farmer's market clientele, there's still parking there in the future for people to park somewhere. The last thing we want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater, take away all the parking that the farmer's market relies on and develop all that site, and then everybody has there's no place to park for the farmer's market. That'd be pretty silly. So we have that incorporated into the plan. We then have a mixed-use building on Sona and this additional phase 4 housing. And so when all that is done, as compared to our original plan that we presented a few years ago, where we said we thought there was a $67 million investment, what we're looking at all in is about a $91 million investment in West Allis. So we see the opportunity now that we've pivoted on this food issue, which really is, ironically, the food issue is the lowest value issue of the whole project. And it's the one we all talk about. But it is not the one, it's the one that's necessary to create a level of excitement, but it does not, retail space, food and beverage space does not create a whole lot of tax increment. So we're anxious to get these other buildings done. And here's the way it all fits together. So at the top of the page, here's the yellow shades are commercial space, the blue shades are housing. So this building is up and it's been occupied and is hopefully fully assessed at this point because we all want Aurora to pay their real estate taxes. I'm sure they want to pay them as well. This is both phases of the housing being delivered here on this block north of on the Nona, the balance of the Nona site. So this property line between Aurora and housing, until the Aurora lease was signed, that line couldn't be set. Where we started with Aurora was they were going to pull up a semi outside with an MRI machine in and stuff, and we ended up with basically a state-of-the-art clinic. So part of what we did was we helped move them into a space where they provided us with a higher quality building than they had first promised. We thought that was important for the image of the project overall. So now we move down onto the Sona block, which is this block right here. And the idea is, there were three parts of the costs that we showed you. This right here is the food cluster coming down adjacent to the West Allis Farmers Market. The food cluster is comprised of individual food producer, vendor, retailers. So take, for instance, a baker who would be doing commercial bakery, but having some kind of a bakery shop, pastry cafe out front. A coffee roaster, grinder, packager who'd have a tasting room out front. Any kind of similar food producer that would have a retail presence out front. So the idea is that we want to bring, when people come to the farmers market and they enjoy mixing and talking to people that actually produce and grow and bring their food to market, we want to give people the same experience on a different side of the food industry, which is the production side of things like, it could be beverages, it could be foodstuffs, it could be things like I said, like bakery. It could be a specialty meat producer. Someone in Madison, we're partnered up with someone in Madison. They make some of the best charcuterie in the state of Wisconsin. That's put into restaurants all over Wisconsin. So it really, this whole food thing has really taken off. And the reason we're focused on it is because there's so many food dollars now being spent on dining out versus grocery stores. And we think that this whole cluster and these types of businesses could easily continue to expand down onto lands that are either owned or could be owned by the CDA or the city in the future. We then want to make sure that we provide for an insert of public parking that would allow people that shop that use the market, that patronize the farmers market. We want to give them a field. The field is here right now on the front. Obviously, you don't want to leave parking on the main corner of the site, but we did allow for parking inside. And then this is a mixed-use building that wraps around it. It has about 11,000 square feet of additional retail space in it and 75 apartments in it. Then we moved to the west side of the railroad tracks, which are right here. And when we got Baum Revision interested in the Kearney Trecker building, the challenge of that use is that it's probably the most exciting thing you could do with the building, but there needed to be some additional tax increment added because it doesn't create a whole lot of tax increments. So we came up with a concept of marrying this building right here with a second residential building over here that has 90 units in it. It has its own parking underneath and some other attendance space, parking spaces here. But the idea is that this piece could then blend with this streetscape where you really, starting up here, you have housing, farmers market, housing, commercial, housing, commercial. So you have this mixed use zone where all these different buildings create this terrific streetscape and tie it all together. The opportunity, we think, also exists to provide with, obviously, some laborious negotiations with the railroad, but we've been able to do it before at other sites to get crossings on rail lines. If we can get a pedestrian crossing here and leverage the parking that's associated with the Kearney Trecker building, then you've got something where this parking and this parking feed into the two biggest traffic generators in the area, which will be this event space and the farmers market. You've been at the farmers market on a food truck night. You've been there, kegs and curds. You've been there, Chris Kindle Mart. I mean, these things draw lots of people, and you need lots of parking to satisfy lots of people. And just as what's happened in the historic Third Ward, where they've been developing all the empty lots, the parking lots are all being developed with buildings. You got to find places for people to park, so tying these parking fields together allows you to right size and not have to overbuild these fields. And we think, and then that links right into one of the main entrances that they have proposed for the event space. So this now creates kind of a campus through here where people that experience this by parking here, they can go to the farmers market. They'll get exposed to and experience these food hall or these food cluster retailers, and then they can also get very easily park once and come over here because there's other food and beverage related uses that are going to go into this event space. So that's the overall plan for the Sona site as far as how it all fits together. Now the question is, well, what is it gonna be? What is it gonna look like? So what I'm showing you here is a picture of one part of the North End development. This particular phase was a $56 million phase of the project. It includes a 30,000 square foot Fresh Time Farmers Market store. This happened to be photographed before the permanent signage went up. But I picked this photo because it shows the predominant use of a metal panel system on the exterior of the building. And it's a kind of a shiny silverized metal panel, which to a lot of people says it speaks to food, beverage. It reminds people of things like tanks and breweries or food processing. Lots and lots of buildings that are done in and around the food space for food tenants features metal panel systems on buildings. This happens to be a galvalume finish, so it has a really strong visual presence on the street. And we wrapped this $56 million building with a fair amount of this metal panel to help show off Fresh Time Farmers Market as a primary tenant. So earlier this year, I was in Nashville and toured some of the hottest neighborhoods in Nashville, Tennessee, which is, if you're not familiar, it's the fastest growing city in the Midwest, faster than Madison, faster than Des Moines, and there are lots of neighborhood revitalizations going on. And I came across this one project on a tour while I was down there for the Urban Land Institute conference, and this is a company called Diskin Cider. They make hard ciders. So Diskin Cider came along. They found, and I didn't have the before picture. They found this dilapidated old service building that was a service garage where they fixed semi-tractor trailers for semis. And the thing was, it was a pre-manufactured frame building, a steel frame building, but it was the wrong building in the right spot. And they said, hey, you know what? We're going to put some money in it. We're going to basically take the skin off, put a new skin on, and we're going to make this kind of a cool industrial space. And then we're going to open it up, and we're going to have a tasting room. We're going to have an event space, and this place is just hopping down there, and it's right in the middle of this tremendous revitalized neighborhood in Nashville where all this money is being reinvested. But this gave us the inspiration to look at a different building type. One of the biggest problems we've had with all of these prospects that we've been talking to is as soon as you put pencil to paper and you say, okay, the building's gonna be $130 a square foot or something, you can stop. I mean, the math is over. They're gonna find an existing restaurant someplace else, the kitchen's in, the hood's in, they'll get a little facade grant or something, they'll fix up the storefront and you're done. And they'll be in there for $50,000. That's what we're competing with. So, we had to come up with a better mousetrap. So we began to explore this idea of using pre-engineered buildings and then just putting a really cool skin on the building to try to get our numbers in line. So we started to look around the country. And sure enough, here we are in Seattle, Alamo Brewing in Seattle. Very simple pre-engineered metal frame buildings. It's one of the most photographed buildings now in this neighborhood of Seattle because of the way that they treated the building. This is all new construction. Obviously it's very strong forms, very modern looking buildings, but it conveys a sense of, and you can see over here where their beer garden is that's framed by these three buildings. Their beer garden's off to the right here. But it's a very simple building. And it's a really attractive set of buildings they put together. We began to look at other buildings. This one happens to be a lower technology building. This isn't even a steel frame building. This is literally a pole barn building, but they have framed it and they've skinned it and they've created a exterior appearance to it that makes it feel really modern. And this really kind of tall space in here is the kind of space that people are acclimating to for events and for retailing and the like. And this is really cost effective to do this. So suddenly we say, hey, now we got a building type where we can do certain things and make things look really cool, and we can do this in a way that isn't so expensive. This is not $150 a square foot, in part because we're not engineering the whole building from scratch. So, so we have found this building type, and we've been working with two major suppliers of that building type and looking at the whole range of product that we can put together to make these buildings look like this really unique cluster on the corner of 66th and National Avenue. So part of our strategy on Sona is to get these buildings to the point where they can look like the stuff that you're seeing in the images here. We can do this, and we can create a very cool building for about half the cost of the numbers we've been burning through with probably 15 different restaurants, prospects, and, you know, I don't know how many other food retailers we've been involved in, but we just can't get the numbers to work. And the numbers don't work because new construction costs are through the roof. This is a way to combat the new construction cost problem. It's a way to actually come up with cooler buildings than we could build from scratch. And it's something we're really excited about. We're seeing this in neighborhoods. You know, you go to Lincoln Park in Chicago, it's there. You go to Seattle, it's there. You go to Nashville, it's there. Go to Chelsea Market in Manhattan, it's there. This vocabulary is all over the place in food and beverage. So then how do we get there? How do we bring people in? We're working right now with an anchor tenant that would take a little bit more than 50%, 55% of the first phase. The construction costs of these buildings are low enough that we could spec the project and not worry about having to fill it. So we don't have to worry about waiting for the next guy or the next guy. And we're gonna get one guy and go on the corner, and that's it. That makes it a lot easier. The degree of difficulty of trying to put two restaurants together on the corner is probably a factor. I mean, you can cube that. It's a factor of 8 to try to get two restaurants to actually sit down and do it. You think you've got a restaurant, and then someone says, hey, we just found an old building here, we found a building there, here's a building that's getting dumped. A lot easier for us to go into that. They're buying existing buildings at $20, $30 a square foot. So it's just not an easy space to compete in. Half the problem is getting the pro forma to work. The other half of the problem then is how do we attract people and how do we finance them? So we've beefed up our team on this so that we have a better channel for bringing people in on the food side. John and I can go and eat at every restaurant in the metropolitan area, but that's not going to bring anyone in. What's going to bring anyone in are the relationships within the food industry. So we have hired a gentleman by the name of Kyle Cherrick. You may know Kyle Cherrick as Wisconsin Foodie. For 11 years, he originated, produced, and starred on the syndicated series on public television. And he went all around the state, talked about the food scene all around the state, introduced you to restaurants and things that were going on in the food space. He knows every restaurateur, every food supplier, anyone who's in the food chain in the state of Wisconsin. Kyle Cherrick knows them. And we said, why are we doing this? We're going to hire Kyle Cherrick. So Kyle Cherrick just finally kind of burned out on his series. He's walked away from Wisconsin Foodie. He was available. We've actually done some business with him before, sourcing a restaurateur for some space we had. So we said, Kyle, you're on our team here in West Allis. We're going to get going. He's all excited about it. He's talking to people. He's out on the street. He's working for us now to bring the food culture in. We just collectively, we just haven't done it. I mean, we haven't brought anyone in. So that's one half the problem. So we can bring a lot of people in. The second half of the problem is a lot of people in the food industry have really great ideas. They got great recipes. They can work magic in the kitchen. They have no idea what a balance sheet or a P&L statement is, and they just can't do it. They can't bring it in. So we said, okay, we need to find someone who actually knows how to talk numbers with these guys and who can help them and who's a real resource in helping people make sense out of making this kind of a capital investment. So the second guy we brought into our team now is Mike Harrigan, who John is someone that John knows well. He's with a group called Wisconsin Economic Development Association. He happens to be familiar with West Allis because he just helped Capri get their financing over there. He helped source a broader base of options for Capri to look at so they could capitalize their deal on Greenfield Avenue. So what Mike Harrigan does, he's retired from Ellers Associates, one of the largest municipal finance advisors in the state. And through his work that he's doing now with Wisconsin Economic Development Association, he is helping banks. He's helping put together banks that need to make investments in CRA qualified census tracts and businesses that are locating there. Capri is a perfect example where he brought four different banks to the table. I think John was four banks is what he told me, but he brought four different so that Capri could look at different opportunities for different financing with different banks. So he acts as kind of in a broker capacity, but it's invaluable because the owner of Capri said, "I'm with such and such bank right now. They're really not paying attention to me. What else can I do?" So someone like Mike Harrigan has resources beyond, normal and customary and understands because of his past professional practice, but also because of his affiliation with WIDA, that he can bring in banks that need to make investments in CRA qualified census tracts. The mother lode of this project, we're CRA, we're optimized for CRA related investments that banks have to make to maintain their charters and the like. We have opportunity zone designation, which we've already used once to attract equity as part of the investment that we've already made here. New markets tax credits. The challenge on new markets tax credits has always been the timing of the credits and when fire, for instance, would have to get them out. So we've actually opened up a second channel with First Pathways to talk to them about new markets tax credits. They happen to have a specialty in food and beverage that they've developed. So if it doesn't work out with fire for whatever reason, we have a second source of new markets tax credits now. And then we've always got to get through the development agreement and the like. But that's kind of doing business. That's hopefully now that we've been through it twice already on Aurora and on the housing, hopefully we have a easier time doing the third one. So we feel like we've got a lot of momentum here. We feel it's going in the right direction. That we have actually an outcome that provides a substantially higher assessed value in investment than what was originally envisioned. We think that what's been invested already has helped leverage what I think is going to be some really exciting reinvestment in the Kearney and Trecker block. And I think this thing's just going to take off at this point. We have one hurdle to get over, which is getting the first guys across the line on the food and beverage. And if you've ever worked with anyone, small proprietors in food and beverage, they're not easy. These are not people that are methodical in terms of their decision making. So the first deal might be a little bit of a lost leader for us, but I hate to use the term we're going to make it up on volume, but we think we will make it up. It's again, that first piece is not it's a $6 to $7 million investment. This is more of a chip shot. We just financed a $37 million housing project here. So, this is not, we've got momentum. We want to continue to move forward. We want to get this thing done. And when you really look at it, ironically, it's not that far off schedule. It's rearranged. The parts and pieces are redone. But when you think about what's happened in the market, and you understand that people a lot smarter than all of us in food and beverage, if Sendix came in and made a $20 million investment and lost their shirt on it, there are a lot of people that have miscalculated this food and beverage business in Milwaukee. We want to get this thing right because it reflects on the farmers market. We think the market is right, and we think we now have some additional resources to help bolster our team. I kind of feel like we got some mid-season roster changes here. We've been allowed to expand the roster to 40 off of 25. Now we can add to our pitching staff. We can add some utility players. And I think that these two adds are going to be huge for us going forward.
I concur with what Bob has been saying, particularly the style of building. I think to refocus on who we want to attract and how we want to attract them, at what price point they can afford. We were always way over all of their price points. I think some prospects that Bob's working with are the kind of entities that we'd like to have in West Allis and that would fare well in that environment. The key is getting them to say yes. Where are you at, by the way, in that SONA part one?
Well, the first user, who's our key user, is, you know, they have their financials together now for us. They're working on their capitalization plan on how they're going to actually capitalize this. They're looking at a few of their options with their attorney right now on that. But they're close. We could hear from them tomorrow. We could hear from them next Monday. They're working on it continuously. They have to what they're trying to figure out right now is how do they capitalize their expansion? Because their business is moving and growing, and they need they're looking at somewhere in the range of $1 million of expansion capital. They happen to get into a really bad retail deal that is kind of hamstrung them for the last 18 months or so, but they're starting to see their way out of that. So there are probably 7 or 8 moving parts to the decision. We've actually offered to provide venture capital on the investment side to them as well, separate of the real estate transaction. We think the business, this lead business, it's a Milwaukee-known brand. For them to move to West Allis would be it'd just be a home run to get them here. So we've been working them along, and we know that there's timing related to dedicating the credits, so we've told them that. But we're talking to them regularly, and we think they want to do the deal. They're just, you got to get them to jump off the cliff with us. You know, it's for small business people. It's a little bit of a they're working through it. But they came to us. We didn't go to them initially. We've been working with their entire team on this for a while, on both the investment side as well as on the real estate side. We've engaged their builder, who they had been working with, to put a building on a freestanding site. Their builder has since brought us another 20,000 square foot prospect, which we haven't qualified yet, but we're interested in it. I mean, these guys that are in this type of building business, that put up these buildings, these pre-engineered buildings, they have their own specialties. So we're competitively talking to 2 different builders. One of them happens to have a huge presence in the food business. Now, not every food-related business is going to be appropriate, because if we don't want to have people just manufacturing down here. We want people to have a retail presence. We want to have that interaction. But there are a lot of people out there looking for something, and West Allis offers them an incredible opportunity. I mean, it's we can produce this space for them a lot more cost effectively than them going out and buying a piece of property in some business park.
I also think Mandel has got to help this evolve quicker by finally coming to the conclusion that a lot of these restaurateurs can't afford to build the building. And so they're going to build everything out for them. And that's, I think, is going to help this move this thing forward. So I think the potential is much has improved to be able to get this phase started.
The problem with restaurants, you cannot spec build a restaurant. You can't do it. You can barely get your own kitchen remodeled, given, your wife's input, right? I mean, this is hard stuff to do. Restaurateurs say, everything's got to be exactly the way I want it, or I don't want the restaurant space. So we can't just go out there and throw up 10,000 square feet for a couple of restaurants and ask them to come. It just doesn't work that way. For the type of space that we're talking about and the type of businesses we're talking about, it does work that way. The space is a lot more fungible. And the building type is a lot more flexible. So depending upon where we put a panel of glass, a huge glass overhead door, how we set up the building, it's a very flexible building. And suddenly you can say, yeah, we can make that adjustment, and people can fit in there a lot easier than the alternative. And we just think that the collection of buildings is gonna end up looking so cool at the end of the day, people are gonna wanna be here. It's just, I mean, we are like, you know, we're like off the charts excited about it, and, you know, at some point along the way, you gotta have some reality in the business. The reality of this is that we gotta get this first guy signed. We may not make any money on the first guy, but that first guy is gonna be so important for us, you know, it'll trigger the rest of the space. Hopefully, that other land that kind of comes down along 66, there's a lot more acreage on that block that isn't planned yet. So, and some of it's actually on the space that we had planned initially. So we haven't even planned all the space out that we were initially offered. So there's all sorts of additional opportunity to leverage up here, and we just gotta get it going. I mean, it's no different than what we did north of National Avenue. We just had to get it going. We had to get our foot in the ground. And in that case, you know, we had to get Aurora set because we did not want to lose the Aurora deal. We could not start the housing until we had Aurora set and knew what they wanted. We would have just, you know, to lose Aurora from the community would have been a really dumb thing for all of us. I mean, and they built a state-of-the-art facility to boot. So, so we're happy with where we're at. We're happy with the money we've invested. We're looking forward to investing more money. We think we've got a really great scheme for Sona. It's taken a lot of time for all of us to kind of fess up on, hey, this idea of trying to get restaurants is not gonna work as a lead. And when the entire grocery business basically shut down, back in 2016, 2017, that kind of the dominoes fall and all the co-tenancy agreements go away when you don't have the traffic generator. So, you know, groceries aren't expanding right now. We're not holding out any hope for that, at this point, and that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna go across the street, we're gonna talk to NDC, we're gonna see if they can leverage up, the grocery that they have across, there's a grocery there, it's Pick and Save. They put a little bit of money into it, we'd like to see them put a lot more money into it. So, you know, there's other stuff that can happen in the immediate area, but now we're talking about having a collection of 330 apartments instead of just 177. You add that to the 196 across the street from us, now you got some density. Now you've got some rooftops to really support the businesses and the restaurants that are in the area. And that's what this area needs. It needs the rooftops, it needs the housing, it needs the population density, and it also then needs something to do. And the something to do is either over here on Greenfield Avenue, or it's right at the corner, it's at the farmer's market. The farmer's market, food truck night, last Friday was food truck night. Tons of people come out. You know, it's just, we can get people there and you can make this a really exciting space. We gotta finish this out now.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions?
Mr. Clark?
Bob, you paint with a broad brush, which I would expect you to, and you're always enthusiastic, which I would expect. The smallest component of the entire project is the kiosk, and that was gonna be done quickly, and nothing's happened. It's just small, and wonder why you haven't moved that forward.
Well, quite frankly, I'm glad we didn't, because the kiosk is,
To also answer your question, Mark Lutz was going to do
Yeah.
that kiosk.
we have a letter of intent with Mark on
And
the
then
kiosk.
he went and did a bunch of other stuff in West Allis, so I'm good with that.
Oh, if Mark doesn't, I mean, we have a letter of intent on file with Mark. If he doesn't come for this kiosk is not gonna be a problem. But the challenge of that kiosk, the original kiosk building that was designed there, $375 a square foot for a kiosk. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this building style and, of course, here we go. The building style that this building style, we now have the building here redesigned in that same style, so it all fits together. And so it all looks alike, you know, that it creates a theme there. So if we would have built the least significant part of the project, you know, we can't even finance that. You know, that's an off balance sheet, that's a cash investment.
We
we
also
can't do we can't do a new markets tax credit deal, it's too small. You can't do, you can't do, it's just not gonna work under any of the normal and customary ways,
We
so.
also told Bob to focus on the big stuff. That's a little project. It's not gonna make or break the big project, but let's get the big project going.
Yeah. But that's, if someone would have said, the kiosk is the most important building, get it done right away, we would have pushed it, but we were gonna be pushing a string a little bit at $375 a square foot. So we would have been spending a lot of time grinding away at redesigning that building. We may end up designing a building that just doesn't fit with anything else we have planned on.
Any other questions? We'll talk about more of this in closed session, but, Bob, thank you very much for,
Great, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Sounds exciting.
We go to item number 3, discussion relative to properties located at 106 Hundred and 10620 West Greenfield Avenue, former Burger King.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Want to get there, Sean? The problem that we've had with Burger King is that the owner of the land underneath the building is separate from Burger King, who owns the building, and the Burger King owns the lot to the west. And we've been trying to get people involved to try to redevelop that property, and they can never get all the parties on the same page at the same time. The land on that lot is now for sale for about $400,000. And Burger King still has a lease on that for another 4 years. And we'll get into that more into closed session as to how we might be able to help catalyze push this thing forward.
Everybody satisfied to wait to close session on that item? We'll go to item number 4, resolution amending professional service contract with Concord Group TCG in the amount of not to exceed $20,000 for advisory service related to tax increment district number 17, City of West Allis, Lincoln Avenue, West Corridor. Mr. Stevel.
Second.
Been moved for approval, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes. Item number 6, discussion relative.
Five.
Or 5, excuse me. Item 5, discussion relative to Lincoln Avenue Corridor Tax Increment District Number 17. Mr. Stevel.
Mr. Chair, the Joint Review Board approved the TIF district this afternoon, or this morning, late this morning. So that TIF is officially created once we send the communication to the Common Council. And we'll talk about more of this in closed session, but the TIF district was generally about what we had initially proposed. We've added, the developer wanted 1.45 million, and that was we had determined through our consultants that it was a correct amount. We added the interest that he's got to pay for during the time period, because this is a pay-go, so he has to borrow that money from a bank to be able to finance that, so we added that in there. We also changed the base value of the project. Instead of using 2018 values, we're using 2019 values. So we put the upper numbers in there. What that does is that it increases the base value, which all the underlying taxing jurisdictions continue to get taxes off of. And it's the increment of what's above that, what goes to the development. So all the taxing jurisdictions will benefit from that move. And we're still projecting it to be closing out in 7 years. And we'll talk about more about that in the closed session.
Seven.
We'll go to item number 6 then, resolution authorizing the executive director to enter into a letter of intent and agreement with Baum Revisions LLC Group for property located at 6771 West National Avenue, potentially portions of 6700 West Mitchell Street.
That's all you need to, you don't need to bring
Okay.
the tax kit numbers.
Approval.
Second.
Been moved for approval and second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Stevel.
Sean, if you want to make a few brief comments, then we'll talk about this in closed session.
Sure. Yeah, this is progressing nicely. as you can see, they've sort of started their due diligence phase. This is just a picture of them out there on last Thursday. They had their architect, structural engineer, energy envelope person. They had their whole crew out there, their marketing people, and they went through the building in detail for hours. And so it's nice to see how enthusiastic they are to have their whole team out there. They had their event space person, sort of figuring out where things may go and things of that nature. And so they're tightening up their numbers, looking at all the details, and so that's good to see. Again, a review of it. We've all seen the space, the event space, and the various commercial users, brewery, and other food producers throughout. The LOI, just briefly, it just goes through the generalities that we've already talked about. The general purchase price, form of assistance that they'd be looking for new market tax credits, 11 to 12 million. This is a big part of the funding source, and this is the historic the tax credits. And so as part of that, they have to go through a rigorous architecture review process that looks at a lot of details. So that's built into the LOI, sort of how that's all going to work out. The state's going to want us to remove the panels sooner rather than later. They're trying to sort of get the state to hold off on that because they're protecting this historic building, and so there's sort of a negotiation that's happening, and so working out those details, environmental details are being sorted out as well. Shared parking, they're trying to figure out how much parking they're going to need and how that's going to work and how that would be financed. And so 90 days is what the LOI is set up for. We can certainly talk about more of that in closed session.
You want to finish the vote?
Thank you, Sean.
You can finish the vote?
We'd like to go into closed session to talk
Before we
about some other
vote on
issues
it.
before we
Okay.
adopt it. We can come back.
Thank you.
and adopt
We'll
it.
hold that. Let's see, we go to item 7. Discussion relative to property located at 1323 South 65th Street, former Motor Castings Company. Mr. Stevel.
The last CDA meeting, the CDA asked that the department take a look at that building to see what potential reuse options are there for it. Patrick and I toured that building, and this is probably the best photo example of that. It's lots of low ceilings. There's not a lot that you can really do with that. There is one building there that is reusable to the very south part that Motor Castings bought about 8, 9, 10 years ago. That building is really neat. It could be reused. The rest of it, I'm not even sure a cold storage person could possibly use that building. The only thing I could see for it is demolition, and that's kind of what we were looking for, is what options are in there. And we're currently exploring what kind of multifamily could go in there, or what other reuse options are for that land mass, along with the broker who showed it to several people, and they're all trying to figure out what they can do with it. And so the short answer is we don't know, but demolition is probably in its future.
Mr. Clark.
John, is that property being marketed,
Yes.
and by whom?
Is it Colliers?
I believe so.
Yeah. And they've taken 3 or 4 people through it, but they haven't gotten any offers on it, or that we know of yet. But it probably cost about $800,000 just to demolish the building. They probably won't be out for a while. They say winter months are the best months of the year to do industrial sales. And so the company that bought Motor Castings has taken out all the equipment that they need, and so they'll have a sale of whatever equipment's left sometime in this winter. So it probably won't be available for disposition until after the first of the year.
It's
What
been
is the city doing to advance the sale? What are we doing?
Staying out of their way.
Pardon me?
Staying out of their way.
it's been listed for probably 2 to 3 months. It's been out there.
Where's the company that bought them? Where are they located?
Ohio.
Ohio?
Or Indiana, maybe.
Indiana?
Indiana.
I think it's Indiana.
Okay, thank you. No further? Okay, we go to item 8, discussion relative to the redevelopment of Chris Hansen's Incorporated in the area of 92nd Street and Lapham Avenue. Mr. Stevel.
As you're all well aware, uh, Chris Hansen has bought back a lot of the properties that they'd sold away, when they made a previous decision not to expand here 8 years ago. Now they bought them all back and demolished them. And then I'd like to go to a closed session and talk about how we might induce them to make substantial reinvestments into West Allis.
All right, now we want to go into closed session? According to our
And we
agenda.
can go through the rest of the items and then come back.
Okay, E, consider relative report on redevelopment initiatives.
Sean, if you'd like to go through those that you pulled up. real
Yep,
quickly.
6 points development, the yellow panels have, started to go up on the, Mandel residential, development, just a noteworthy thing, yes. 6610 West Greenfield Avenue, Chris Paul's is in his due diligence stage of that, as you know, as you may recall, we have an LOI, with Mr. Paul. He's been going in there with various contractors and looking at all the details and tightening up the numbers, working with his bank. As part of the whole overall process is refinancing at Capri, and so it's all working out well so far, and so fingers crossed that continues to go well. I have no real update on this, other than it's, we haven't heard of any, the brick is starting to go up on the building, and things seem to be going smoothly out at Element 84.
Just one quick comment. The Mandel project will be open for apartment this fall. The Element 84 will probably be in January to start leasing.
Teledyne, is it on here? I'm not sure.
Nothing to report.
You know, we're,
Nothing to report.
nothing to report on Teledyne. 70th and Washington, Cobalt Development came in and may be looking to sort of move things around on their proposal. Previously, as you may recall, that the hotel, the Home to Suites, was proposed for at the corner of 70th and Washington. They may now, move that further south. That would allow for them to sort of market a corner for a retail, or they're talking about a grocer that may be looking in the area.
Small grocer.
A very small one. And so they've been looking at, the possibility of just kind of moving things around. We don't view it as a bad thing. They're just trying to take advantage of the corner of the piece they have, and it gets the hotel actually a little bit closer to the downtown, makes the downtown a little bit more walkable, sensibly for people that might be staying there, so they can visually see it. So this is just how it would build out. So they'd have commercial on the first floor, so take advantage of the corner that they have, and they just stack the office on top of it. So that's just how that lays out. Parking structure in back, and sort of in between them and some place where the parking lot currently is. It's a concept at this point. It would have to go through plan commission approvals and things of that nature.
And CDA approval, and ultimately common council approval, but that just, we're not surprised that all these developments evolve as they go through, so we're not surprised, all looks.
Hey,
well.
Sean, go back to that last one. Sure. Thank you. Please, thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's
This
just
was
the
a
potential.
one of the very early proposals, let me borrow the mouse if you would. This area down in here, they talk about buying the shopping center, which is not gonna happen. But this is the school administration building over here, and this is what is referred to as the CTE building, if they wanna build that or not, and we'll be talking with that later as we get into closed session as to what the park, how the role of the park will be involved in the rest of the development.
60th and Beloit, actually, 60th and Burnham is the site of our Better Block project. We had a kickoff event with the neighborhood a month or so ago, and that was well attended. It's 60, 70 people there from the neighborhood, and now the big event takes place on the 6th and 7th. It's meant to be a community build where people will be out there painting bike lanes, building parklets. There'll be a pop-up vendors there, food trucks. We're gonna have a few bands there. It's a way to sort of get the neighborhood together, get people talking together. and just show how different areas can be used, I guess differently, how underutilized areas, you can take advantage of them. So it's just sort of a quick 2-day thing to show, oh, that vacant space can be used, like this. You have a little coffee shop in it, or that gravel parking lot, you could have a little playground there, and you could get a food truck there, and tables and things like that. So it's sort of meant to just show how quickly show how spaces can change for the better, and it's also a way just to get the neighborhood out together.
The key point of this is to help the neighborhood get re-engaged with their own neighborhood, to help guide its future and help make suggestions as how they want it to evolve. That's what we want, is the neighborhood input, the neighborhood driving force.
And so one of the things you see here is, a different way to do bike lanes, or the bike lanes, on the inside of the parking. It's actually the more accepted way to do it. It's just not been done much in the region, so if it's a temporary, this is a sort of more of a temporary kind of paint. So it's a way to quickly show how something can be done in a different way. And and the community gets to actually, literally paint the bike lane, and so gets to
Physically be involved in changing their landscape.
The mural program, I don't think that's actually, I apologize, skip that one.
We're done.
High 100 corridor, just an update, there was a major transaction that took place late last week. The Pick and Save, Kohl's, Marshall's Shopping Center, along with the Walgreens, and I believe it's the one other outlet out there sold to a developer out of Tennessee.
I just want to make a quick point here that Sean and Patrick had met with the same developer about, they came to look at the town center shopping center because it was in an opportunity zone. These guys sold West Allis so much that these guys came back, and when that deal fell apart, they put an offer to buy it and it fell apart. They came back and bought another shopping center, another $70 million investment in West Allis. So we're pretty happy about that.
So it's a major transaction. We're really excited. They're looking at redoing the facade of the building, maybe adding some other uses, and so they're coming in a week to talk about their future plans for the site. So that's a big one. 100 corridor study. It's beginning. We've begun to schedule our shareholder focus groups. We've got 15 participants scheduled. Those are going to take place on September 5th and 6th, and that's sort of the first stage of that Highway 100 study process, is to get some input from various, from realtors, from property owners, council members, things of that nature. People in different areas, to see what's their view of Highway 100, what would they like to see change, and that. So, got that underway.
Is there any update on the DOT project?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, they are gonna proceed,
with the resurfacing.
right, with just the resurfacing, and
So
it's.
next year.
And, yeah, the plan is 2020 as of now, right?
For the resurfacing?
With resurfacing.
I thought they said it was 2021, but it possibly, depending on state financing, may move it up to 2020, is what I heard.
Jason's right, we were at the same thing. He listened better than I did. Yeah.
Pete told me 2020, so we'll leave it at that. And then the last one, Sean?
Beecher Street corridor, just a quick update, if you've been around, that you'd see that this trellis is actually up in front of the building now. They're actually hoping to be open by this Friday, fingers crossed. It's a beer garden called Station Number 6. Mark Lutz, basically purchased the old auto repair facility and has remodeled it, and so pretty exciting.
What are we calling it now? Lutz
Lane.
Lutz Lane.
Can anyone tell us the significance of the name Station Number 6? Does anyone know that? Because I don't know.
I don't.
Give me a
Call
second,
Mark
I can
Lutz.
think of one.
Yeah.
Is that the 6 properties bought?
How many fire stations do we have?
We have
Three.
three,
Yeah,
and
three.
it's near Station Number 2.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't know why.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll ask him though. We'll have it for you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Get on that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, that is all we have. If I'd like to go into, just a second, I think.
Mr. Clark?
The 116th and Morgan initiative has fallen into disfavor. Why is that, and what's the status?
It's not on the agenda. That was our fault. I'll talk to you about it later, effectively telling you that the environmental consultant will start in the middle of September.
The environmental consultant will start in September. All right, will you put it back on the agenda?
We'll be on next month.
And then on the Highway 100 corridor, the Walgreens at Highway 100 in Greenfield, which is closed. They closed because of the traffic pattern.
Yes.
What is going to happen to that building?
We are talking with the real estate brokers now about what could possibly be done. And if we did follow up, we'd have to go into closed session to talk more about that.
Okay?
Okay. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved in second. You take roll call, please.
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
out and we did lunch. We were open 7 days a week, and we did this super taco. It was big, huge burrito, and that we were kind of the front of that. And now it's a very common thing, Taco Tuesday. We still have the regular tacos on our menu, but we just brought back street tacos on Tuesdays. And the street taco is a smaller thing, a little more crafty, we'll say. You know, we do shrimp, chicken, and beef. And the idea is that it's not just a big giant something for $6. You know, it's a little more specialized. So.
You can get a little variety
Yep.
with your different tacos.
Yep.
What would you say is one of your most popular food items?
Well, you know, Friday fish fry has been a classic in West Allis, and it kind of goes. It's maybe not as strong as it used to be. I think culturally, Milwaukeeans are. It's less of a mandatory thing where everybody goes every Friday and gets a fish fry, and that's a good thing because then people can try something else. Fish fry is still very strong. We do a burger. You know, we do a Build-A-Burger. We hand form our patties. Burgers have always been big, but yeah, that's probably our big sellers is the burger.
So in addition to being the owner of Benno's, you also are one of our aldermen in the city. So how does being an alderman also affect your job as business owner?
It's really interesting because they are kind of closely intertwined. My wife and I, how I came to be on the council, my wife and I were both very active volunteers in the schools when our kids were little, and one of the then aldermen knew he wasn't going to be on the council anymore because he was moving on to being a judge, and he suggested I consider it, and I never would have thought I was going to be on the city council, and this is 15 years ago, but it's been very, very interesting. I've always liked to volunteer on different levels, and I'm not that being an alderman is volunteer, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a job, but it's really nice to be able to give back to the city that's given me so much. I met my wife here. I've had a successful business here, raised 4 children here. But as alderman, I do sit on the License and Health Committee, and it's very interesting the expectations that some people have of the business, or I'll say their lack of knowledge of the business when they want to open up, or even some of our longtime businesses, some of the things that go on in the community.
And so you're involved in a la carte, you're involved with the Bike Federation, you're involved all over the city. So what do you got coming up next?
Well, you know, you talk about a la carte. Being a business here in downtown West Allis, I think West Allis has been, like I said, I'm grateful for what I've been able to get from the city. I think West Allis, down Greenfield Avenue, is a perfect location. I have customers who come from Waukesha. I have customers who come from Mequon. I have customers who come from Franklin. You know, our access here, you know, there's always something going on. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Wooden wings, a la carte, the car show, all things that I'm able to be a part of because of where we are here in Greenfield Avenue.
So if somebody wants to stop in and try a new craft beer or try a Benno burger, where can they get a hold of you?
Well, we are right here, 7413 West Greenfield Avenue in downtown West Allis. We're a half a block from City Hall, kind of across the street from the post office. We're open 6 days a week. We're closed Sundays. We're closed holidays. We open at 4 p.m. And you can find us online. Our website is bennosbar.com, and we have a big Facebook presence.
Well, thank you, Marty, for taking the time to sit with us today on Behind the Bid. Again, my name is Emily Einekner. We are at Benno's Genuine Bar and Grill, and I'll see you next time on Behind the Bid.
emergency.
A life-saving number to call when you are in dire need of emergency services. And it can be overwhelmed sometimes by those who are frequent callers. Most of these people don't realize how often they call for emergency services. They are often alone, scared, elderly, frail, or have mental health issues that drive them to call 911 over and over again. The West Allis Fire Department has a program to address the needs of these people. It's the Mobile Integrated Healthcare Program. It's designed to help people who lack connection to a primary healthcare provider or have social and mental health needs and then reduce their dependence on the emergency 911 system.
The mobile healthcare program originated really back in the late 1990s when the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration published a document called the EMS Agenda for the Future Implementation Guide. And what it did is it identified that EMS could do much more for their patients. It wasn't about always taking the patient to the emergency department. For the last couple of years, we've been meeting with some of our medical partners in the community and having discussions and discussing the fact that we can provide better care for our patients by taking them to alternative locations, not necessarily the emergency department all the time. Oftentimes, the health care they need can be better provided at a medical home like their primary care physician's office, not to the emergency department. We love the concept. We know there's a lot to it. And so we traveled down to Texas where they've got some very well-developed mobile integrated healthcare programs. And once we got down there, it just reaffirmed that we're on the right path here. We got a good program. We just need to develop it for our community to see how we can best serve our residents and our citizens.
The Mobile Integrated Healthcare Program has three main principles: educate, navigate, and advocate.
The three elements of the program are to educate, navigate, and advocate for the patient. The educational piece is to sit down with the patient, make sure they totally understand what their healthcare needs are, and make sure that they're connected with a physician. Make sure that they're taking their prescriptions as they need to. And then the navigational piece is to assure the patient knows where they can go to get the best healthcare, the most cost-effective healthcare, and not necessarily go back to the emergency department over and over again to get that care. And then finally, the advocate. And that's, we sit down and we connect all the healthcare providers together to make sure we're all working in concert to provide the best care for the patient.
When we first meet with the patient, we find out who's involved in their care. We want to get the patient into a medical home, which is usually their primary care physician. We connect up with all of the partners that are involved in the patient's care, and we try and develop a common plan for that patient's care.
The focus is on the patients, their needs, getting them better health care, connecting them to a primary provider who will know them and what they need, as opposed to going to the ER all the time.
So a normal 911 call, what happens is a person ends up having a medical emergency, calls 911, the paramedic shows up. What we find is that the person has had some kind of deficiency of taking care of themselves for whatever medical need it is. So the paramedics come there, they stabilize, transport that person to the hospital. Once they get to the hospital, they'll kind of do a long-term care for them, a couple days, give them some medications, give them some new directives, and then send them home. At this point, the person doesn't understand the medications, they don't continue with the proper care, their conditions progress, and they call 911 again. And the system just kind of goes in a cycle and a cycle. It's kind of the cycle that's been going on since EMS probably has really started. So what mobile healthcare does is we kind of stop that cycle. If we get to that house before that medical emergency becomes a 911 call, we're there to kind of educate them, navigate them, and then take them to the proper resource at that point.
Visiting patients on a daily basis or a weekly basis even versus only seeing them during 911 calls, we actually are able to understand the patient's medical condition, understand who the patient actually is, where they're coming from, what sort of medical care they're being provided. We're able to advocate for the patient. We found that some patients don't have a primary doctor, which is obviously a problem. They're just using the 911 system in the hospitals as their doctor. So we're able to get them into a primary doctor, allow them to establish a relationship with that person, and get the care that they need.
Well, most of the time I was housebound and alone and always wondering what I'd do if something happened. And now it's so much different. I mean, the fire department is like family and friends, and my helpers come over, and we all talk to each other, and they explain what they're doing here, and my friends will talk about themselves, and they've helped me get equipment for the house, fire alarm, and they're helping me get a walker with a seat on it, and just a lot of screens, the light bulbs that burnt out, a lot of different things.
The program also has benefit to the community as it reduces healthcare costs and helps improve the health of the community.
By improving the quality of care, we have increased patient satisfaction. In addition, we have fire department resources that are more available for the community, and decreasing that quantity of care increases the quality for the entire community.
Well, it's more peace of mind. I don't worry about, whether my meds are working or whether they're not working, because they're in every week. Check my blood pressure and my pulse, and everything seems to be running on a more even basis. And so I went in to see the doctor the day before yesterday, and he's downgrading one of my meds from 20 milligrams to 10 milligrams. That's all. I don't have the hypertension because I know I'm doing okay because they're checking everything.
I feel a lot safer. I feel like I know more people, and that I would know what to do if something did happen. And if I have a problem, I can always call them. And they come once a week. And if something does happen, I know I can wait a week till they come. I don't want to bother them. And it's just entirely different now. I'm a happier person because I have the visits to look forward to.
Reducing the number of calls to our emergency system, decreasing readmission rates, and improving the health care and quality of life for these patients. That's what the Mobile Integrated Healthcare Program is all about.
Opposed? Resolution passes.
That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no more business to come before this committee this evening. Can I have a motion to adjournment? All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Those crappy phones. How do I know the difference?